Welcome to Vegas Circle Podcast with your hosts, Paki and Chris. We are people who are passionate about business, success, and culture, and this is our platform to showcase the people in our city who are making it happen. On today's podcast, we are sitting down with somebody that's living proof that no setbacks are final. His journey from rock bottom to the national spotlight has had him featured on Oprah, Good Morning America, the Steve Harvey Show, just to name a few. Got lots to talk with this brother about, man. So let's welcome to the circle, award-winning chef, best-selling author, and entrepreneur, Chef Jeff Henderson. Welcome to the circle, my man.
Yeah. Appreciate you.
So we've been watching. You've been on our radar for a while, man.
Okay.
I think we know a lot of the same people, man, like Rich Robledo.
Oh, yeah, that's my man, Rich. Richie Rich.
Rich has been on the show. Yeah. Frederick Hudson.
Yeah, he has a tech company downtown.
We had Frederick on a couple years back. And
he has.
Yep. We had him on the podcast about 3 years ago. And so you come highly recommended, man.
All right.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in, man. Okay. So growing up South Central, L.A., what was it like for you, man? What was life like for you before you went to prison, from understanding what you're going to get into?
Yeah, well, interesting. You know, life back in those days was in the 70s when I was young. You know, I'm 60 years old. Actually, I'll be 61 this Sunday.
60. You got some good genes,
yeah,
man.
Well, you know, the prison, I always tell people, a lot of people don't realize prison preserves you. And we'll get into that. So it took a lot of years off my life. And so growing up in L.A. was interesting. Came from a single-parent home. Grandparents were very instrumental in my upbringing, along with my sister as well. So I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. You know, my grandfather, my great-grandfather was a photographer. My father was a photographer. And so my mother also an entrepreneur as well. And so growing up back in those days, it was a struggle at times. You know, I saw the American dream as a youngster. You know, I was one of those guys who rushed to get on the school bus every day because during integration in L.A., you know, a lot of the homeboys was bus out of the hood into the burbs to go to school. And so I used to wear these glasses when I was young, and the right lens was thick as the bottom of a Coke bottle. So y'all are pretty young, so y'all probably don't remember the thick Coke bottles back in the days.
It's jokes.
Yeah. You know, once you finish the soda, you can take it back to the store and you get 20 cents.
Y'all don't know that. Y'all don't know about that.
Yeah. And so, you know, getting on the bus, I always, you know, fought to get that seat behind the school bus driver because it had the largest window. And it didn't have the seam in the middle. And so every day during that 35-minute, 40-minute bus ride to school, we passed through multi-million-dollar neighborhoods. And so I was a kid that was always curious, always asked questions. I always wanted to know why. And so I began to question, you know, our circumstances. How come they get to live there and we have to live over here? What's the difference in the projects and apartments, low-income housing versus living in a beautiful home? And so when I saw these homes, I was like, I want one of them. I want one of those for my mother. I want the house on the hill with the white picket fence. So that started my childhood dream of the American dream, was a house. Like growing up in a house, you know, with a double-door refrigerator, you know, having, you know, a garage, you know, a dog running around the yard, a basketball hoop over the garage door. You know, those things were kind of important for me. You know, my parents originated from New Orleans, Louisiana. There was a big exodus during the late 50s and the early 1960s, where a lot of people from New Orleans left and went to Chicago for the textile industry. They went to Detroit for the automobile industry.
We're both from there. I'm from Chicago. He's from Detroit.
Okay. And then a lot of folks went to Oakland, longshoremen, and then Los Angeles, where my family chose to go to because they were able to get jobs as domestic workers in Beverly Hills and work for the LA Unified School District.
After you had these things, you know, what next steps did you take, you know, after you kind of had this burning desire, right, to move into entrepreneurship? Have you seen with your family? Like, what was like the natural progression of that kind of inherent ambition?
Well, I think example, you know, my grandfather, my father, my mother modeled the behavior of an entrepreneur. You know, everyone in my house got up early, you know, so as a young kid, we were up at 5 o'clock on weekends in the summers. You know, my grandmother would always make coffee. My grandfather had a janitorial service in L.A., and so he cleaned all the wealthy Jewish delicatessens and bakeries up in Wilshire District. But he also had a contract with Baskin Robbins, which used to be called 31 Flavors. And then he had a bunch of contracts. And so all the boys had to go work with Granddaddy. And so my grandfather used to work as a longshoreman in New Orleans. And he was a very hardened man. You know, he was serious about life. He never was silly. He never clowned around. And when he came to L.A., my father had told me that he didn't want to work under the bootstrap of people who oppressed a lot of black folks down in the South. So he says, I'm going entrepreneur.
Got it.
And my grandfather started out with an old Chevy, and he had a ladder in the trunk, a squeezy, and a mop bucket. And so his expertise was cleaning windows and changing the ballads in fluorescent lights bulbs in businesses, and also buffing and waxing floors. And so as a kid, my grandfather had me cleaning toilets, cleaning floors, cleaning windows. So we saw what ambition looked like. We saw grit
and hard work.
And hard work.
Yeah.
And grit. And I think when you look at the word, when you look at grit, that a lot of people use and really don't understand, that is, I think one of the foundations of grit is when your parent or guardian never let you give up. You know, and my grandfather was that type. If you're sick, if you're not feeling well, you're hurting, you still going to work. And that stayed instilled in me all the way up until today. So my grandfather was ambition. My father was ambition. My grandfather, my great-grandfather had an old school Polaroid, and he hustled nightclubs down in Mobile, Alabama.
Polaroid
And
pictures.
you know, and even though he didn't have a good relationship with my grandfather, it was the visual. So when you think about young people who grow up under adverse childhood experiences, things that you see, hear, and experiences, the long-term impact. And so my grandfather never came to me or my father or my great-grandfather to my grandfather and said, look, I'm going to show you how to hustle. I'm going to teach you the principles of hard work, and here's the payoff. They didn't have the intellect, the capacity to
put
teach,
that together.
but what they did was they allowed us to witness it. And so we learn a lot of times when you're uneducated, which all my family never finished school. My grandfather made my dad stop working in the 7th or 8th grade because he had to deliver groceries in the pharmacy in uptown New Orleans. So he started early, you know, working as like a workerpreneur, but he always had a vision to have his own business, you know. And so my grandfather, you know, I kind of coined the term hustlepreneur. Right. And so that's the next book I got coming out called Hustlepreneurship. Right.
That's what's up.
And so hustlepreneur is a spin on entrepreneur. And so a hustlepreneur has certain lived experiences and entrepreneurial traits that he learned from experience versus in a book or in school. Right. So
or philosophy, just teaching a philosophy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when, you know, when there's no food growing up, you know how to create a meal with government rations. You know how to turn 15 cents into $1. And if mama don't bring food home, you got to hustle. So in my era versus the era today where these young folks are very entitled, if we didn't hustle, we didn't eat, because my mama worked 2 jobs. So for me, I think that experience with my grandfather, and he was tough. And so if wax built up on the floor and I didn't get it right, he had these big hands. He would thump me in my head. And so our bald heads back then were called cavitis. I don't know if you know that.
No, I don't know what that is.
So that's an old term, like military, like dungareens, where your jeans. So the bald head was called a cavitis. And he would thump me in the head along with my first cousins. He said, boy, didn't I tell you to make sure you got that wax? So that's where that mental toughness came in, and respect of authority that allowed me to eventually flourish. But what my parents as entrepreneurs didn't have vision. You see, so they worked that entrepreneurial job as if it was a job. So basically they created a job for themselves. So my grandfather never had the vision, because he had a van that said Charles Henderson Janitorial Services. He didn't have the vision to say, what if I buy 25 vans and hire 25 janitors to go out and then let me go out and negotiate the deals? So they didn't have that type of vision because they didn't have the training for that. And so I think that's where I draw and inherited that entrepreneurial spirit from my grandfather.
Especially because I'm looking at it like writing books, motivational speaker, chef. You got so many things probably from watching all these, people that you've seen set your foundation, that hard work. You probably have 5 different businesses, right, that you've actually developed.
Yes,
too, right?
but you know what's interesting about it is that, so my philosophy is that, you focus on your strengths and you manage around your weaknesses.
Manage around your weaknesses.
Yes.
Okay.
So meaning you guys run Vegas Circle podcast as talent here, but then he does the cameras. That's not your lane.
Correct.
Right? And so when you focus on your gift, the one thing that you do extremely well at a very high level is the gift. See, a lot of times we invest and go to college because of what we're passionate about. I love the golf, but I suck at golf. That's not my gift.
I suck at golf too. He's good at golf. I suck at golf too.
You know what I'm saying? Yep. And so your gift is various things. Sometimes the gift is not a skill set. Your gift that can create revenue streams could be your charisma. It could be your beauty. It could be a physique.
Yeah.
Like
especially now with social media, people got a serious
your talk game, right? Your gift to gab, your communication skills.
That's true.
And so when I was young, I had several little businesses. So my father had a lawnmower. Once we eventually moved out of South Central LA, we moved to Long Beach. I got kicked out of LA Unified School District. And so I wound up going to school in North Long Beach. So my father had a lawnmower. And so I used to take his lawnmower when he left to work, and I cut grass before I went to school. So I used to charge like $25 for the back, $15 for the front. So I always kept a little change.
And I know you was getting it too.
Yeah, every morning before I went to school, I had to have paper.
Because everybody hated cut grass. Man, so you get you in there hustling.
You know, I just was taught that early, right? And then these guys used to come in our neighborhood in these white vans, these white dudes, right? And so we used to go sell gourmet chocolate candy up in San Pedro and Rancho and Palisades. And so I used to sell out all my gourmet chocolate every night, and we would win cash prizes and trips to like Knott's Berry Farm and Disneyland.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually when I wind up going to San Diego, we lived there twice. I had a newspaper route. I had the #1 newspaper route in Linda Vista. Yeah. So money was, I had to have money because
I gotta stop you for one second.
Yeah.
Why all the successful entrepreneurs had newspaper routes? You ever notice
that?
Make money, like back in the day, all the successful entrepreneurs, when you do the history, a lot of them had newspaper routes.
Yeah, and that was like way before social media. I mean, you got all your information
and
from
you learn how to hustle, talk, communicate, sell door to door.
So, and it's interesting you mentioned that because for me, I had a lot of people on my route who didn't look like me.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. You got to be a chameleon. You got to get,
But then what that done for me, it helped me not be, what's the word I want to use? Not to be inferior.
I love that. Yeah.
Right? It taught me not to fear people of wealth, people who didn't look like me, because I got practice in communicating with folks, customer service. And so I had a unique technique, what I used to do. So a lot of the paper boys used to be on our bicycles. We had Schwinn's beach cruisers. So we had the strap, he had a big bag in front of you, the big bag in the back.
My pops hustled newspapers in Chicago. So that's
and
what I know.
And then we had the saddle in the back, right? So they would just go and toss their papers, right? So what I did is I took every newspaper, I put it in a plastic bag. So the newspaper company would give you these plastic bags for rainy days. So when it rains, you're supposed to put that paper in the plastic.
So it don't mess up.
So it don't mess it up. So I put mines in it all the time. And I used to get off my bike. I used to go up, and I had one of my homeboys with me. We would put the newspaper, because it had a hole in it, like a doorknob advertiser, and put it on their screen. So they didn't have to come out of their house into the yard or the driveway to get that newspaper. And so that was part of my tip hustling. So when I came down for collection at the end of every month, they would always hook me up with a nice tip. Good service. Yeah. And so that stuck with me too.
Kids don't
helped me later on in life.
My sons are going to have to listen to this, man. Just the service of doing that, man.
I wish my sons would listen.
The simple things.
You have a chat, you go from like this, setting the foundation, right, of your upbringing, and then I'm sure you go through a phase like hustlepreneurship, you want to call it, right? Where you're really trying to establish what it means to be an entrepreneur. How do I set that foundation? How can I, put the contracts in place? How can I set these agreements, these business licenses? But during that, do you feel like you were going through like a sense of rebellion where you're trying to get quick, money, try to take, audit and stuff to try to take that next step faster? Or do you feel like you had the patience to kind of navigate it in a more like productive way?
No, I don't think it was navigating faster. I think that, and so when you look at the social issues that really impacted young boys and girls of color during that era, is that we look at the high crime in black and brown males and what drives criminal tendencies, what gives birth to the criminal. And so most of us young black males lived in single parent homes where there's no father. So a lot of young men had experiences of their mothers having to prostitute themselves to put food on the table. What I mean for that, not walking on a hoe track or anything, but I mean having a sugar daddy. And so when a young black boy or any boy of any color, I would assume, sees that or come home and see his mother in multiple relationships, and when the old man leaves, mama got a little money, food is on the table. You see what I'm saying? Because the relationship of a mother and her son, that umbilical cord is never severe. It's a special relationship.
And it's your first love. It's your first love.
Our first love, exactly, absolutely. And so when you look at what drives criminal in young black males is the fact that we started hustling to help mama, to put food on the table, to make sure mama had a little change in her pocket. If you ask any drug dealer, especially of color from my generation, why they started, and the first thing they do is they buy their mama a house, just like an athlete does in the NBA or the NFL. We got to get mama a house. We got to make sure she got money so she don't have to be sleeping with an old married man from the burbs. And so that was
messes
the driver.
your conscience up, man.
Yes.
It messes you up.
No
You're
doubt.
Like, I'm not doing this.
And that's the level of trauma. And then it impacts black males. And when I say black males, I speak from my own lived experience. I'm a black man.
I get it.
And so I don't have other type. I don't have the Hispanic experience or the white experience or anything like that. I speak from my own experiences. And so during that era, again, our parents weren't educated. They lacked certain skills. And so, welfare, food stamps, government rations. Back then in the 70s, we got commodity food. So there were government centers we went to, and we got peanut butter, peaches, jelly, bologna, cheese, and all those different things. And again, every day I still had to get on that bus. And I saw the American dream.
Because literally, it takes you away. It's almost like a little
exposure.
And that's why vacation in the morning, man.
And that's why exposure is so important for our young children, so they can see options.
Before, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but it's funny because my wife and I, we talk about this all the time. I will never forget this. I think I was 20 years old. I'm 45 now. And I remember this man told me, and it echoed what my father used to always talk about, was he was saying, do not give your kids, because I didn't have kids at the time, do not give your kids material things, take them on experiences, take them on travel, get them a passport as soon as they in diapers. My wife and I did that. And you see the development of them just seeing stuff. You know what I mean? So that's powerful what you're saying.
And that's important. And I think the reason why my grandfather and great-grandfather and father had those blinders of poverty and they didn't have vision is because they never was exposed. You understand? So when you lack exposure, you lack growth and development. And so when you think about middle-class values of people who come from wealth, their children under the theater. They go to Niagara Falls. They've been on an airplane. They've been to an island. They've been to Europe. And so it's important that children get to see things and remove those blinders and see the possibilities of life.
1,000%. I love that. How did you end up in prison? Is it like where was the turning point that was like, damn, man, it got you caught up where you were selling drugs, or like you were talking about earlier? What got you caught up?
So again, that dream, that desire, that passion for wealth, and to one day get that house on the hill, eventually led to, when I got in high school, started selling weed. Right. So
you were still in South Central at the time.
No, I was in San Diego.
Oh, you were in San Diego.
So how I got to San Diego at the age of 16, I got stabbed in a mall called Cerritos Mall by some gang members.
Damn. Yeah.
And so my mother
Cerritos area.
My mother was living in San Diego, and so after I got out of hospital, Bellflower Hospital, my mother came and got me and brought me to San Diego.
Damn.
And so being in LA around hustlers and entrepreneurs and progressive folks, San Diego was a quiet town next to the Bay. And so they were 15, 20 years behind time in terms of street hustling. And so went out there and got put on the weed game because, borders right there. And you have Fallbrook, the Fallbrooks Mexican cess, the Thai bud, the weed that everybody smoked back then. So I was sold weed in school. I used to sell $1 pinhead joints, and I used to sell dime and nickel bags that I put in Ziplocs. And back then, I didn't wear boxers. I wore tighty whities, right? And so every time I went to school, I would line the front of my underwear with nickel bags of weed. And so that was my little hustle, right? And then so in the early 1980s, during the so-called war on drugs, crack cocaine has showed up. In early 1981. So, you know, Los Angeles was on the forefront in Oakland of the distribution and manufacturing of, back then it was called rock before crack. So in the East Coast, they call it crack because it used to be in a vial, little cracks they would put in a pipe. But on the West Coast, we cooked rock. So they had like, you know, a $50 rock, a $100 rock, $25 rock. And so when I saw the guys start making that kind of money versus weed, I'm like,
change the whole game for you.
Yeah, I need to get in on that. And so I made a $150 investment, and I bought a 1/16 of an ounce, and I just started flipping. I was curb serving. That was running up the cars. Hey, man, I got them rocks, man. I got them rocks. But after a while, I was saying, like, this is dangerous. You know, somebody's going to kill me or something. Because I've never been a gang member, right? Because I never saw profit in gang banging. Like, I can't dislike someone because they live on another side of town or they're white or Hispanic. You know, I judge everyone on individual character. You know what I'm saying?
Going back to that newspaper route.
Yes, exactly.
See, I'm paying attention. I'm following you.
And this is how I became even a successful drug dealer. Part of my life I'm not proud of, but I was one of those guys that can go in any neighborhood. Crip neighborhood, blood neighborhood, Hispanic neighborhood. And so I was a visionary. I saw the big vision. And then when, you know, Scarface came out and, you know, all the the movies back in those days, like I wanted to go to Colombia. Like I was serious about this business all the way down to how I cooked it and how I packaged it and how I marketed that product as well too. And by the time I was 19, I was a millionaire. And so I got the house.
At 19 years old?
At 19. Wow. Up in Dictionary Hills, I built a custom 3-story house in Dictionary Hills overlooking Sweetwater Lake, hooked moms up, family up. Because during that era, you know, there was a huge profit margins in selling rock cocaine. Because you take, and I don't want to get too deep into that. I said to myself when I came here, I didn't want to put a lot of emphasis on that. But the science behind that, like we didn't have the intellectual capacity as chemists to come up with a formula to turn powder into a more higher potent drug. Somebody
did that.
And during the Iran-Contra, the drugs got here from the weapons to Iran to South America. Like that shit just showed up, homeboy. We didn't have no passports. We ain't never been across the border. We didn't have no airplanes. That shit was just coming in. Guys were becoming multi-millionaires overnight. It was crazy.
It's hard to walk away from something like that.
It's very difficult. And what happens, even a lot of our parents turn the other cheek. They in church on Sunday, Pentecostal, Holy Ghost, all that. But when that money started,
my family, man, that's just true.
Same here, right?
It's just true.
And so I remember when my sister told my mother that I was selling drugs. And moms told me, you have to go. You can't sell drugs and be in my house. So I bounced. My mother was single, had my sister and I, but my father been married other times and had other kids. But my mother just had my sister and I. And back then it was living in East San Diego in a one bedroom apartment. And so my sister and I shared a corner group. I don't know if you remember corner group. I'm going back to the day.
No.
Right? So corner group is in the living room. And
is that a West Coast thing?
It could be.
Okay.
There's a little table in the corner, and then the couch you sit on are beds, and you pull them out so two people can sleep there.
Oh, got you.
So we slept in the living room.
Got you.
And then after you wake up, you take your blankets away and you push that back in.
You know, as a matter of fact, I remember staying at a hotel in Long Beach way back in the day, and I think it had it like that.
Yeah, it's called a corner group, right?
Okay.
And I came by to see my mom, my sister, and I told my sister, I said, look, get this to mom. It was $10,000. Damn. $10,000 bills is about that thick right there. And gave it to moms. And mom's paid me. I came over there, and she just thought I was nickel and diming it. But at this time, I started moving in some weight. And then I came with the money, and I gave my mom's $10,000, and she turned the other cheek. like so many mothers did. That none of us saw the damage, the long-term damage that rock cocaine was going to have in our community. So this is why we're having the issues we have today, from the violence, the anger in our young people. It stems from that era. And so during that time, I had 8 cars, I had a custom Mercedes, and I understood certain value systems because even back then, I used to travel, like to Jamaica and Hawaii, and we used to go like this. It was this Easter's travel agency in San Diego. I would go in there and buy like 12 first-class round tickets.
Damn.
And all the homeboys would go to Jamaica for 7-8 days over there, party, live it up,
Have a good time.
and stuff. Yeah, and then but the tough part of it is that the little homies that was riding bicycles, remember the visual learning? They were watching us with the cars, the jewelry, the women, all of that came. And then when you look at the crack cocaine era of the 1980s, you look at the multi-billion-dollar industries that was born out of that. See, we were the first, and I'll show you pictures. I have receipts for everything, so I can back up everything I say with receipts, with photos, documentation. We had the big Turkish rope chains with the big Mercedes medallions, right? And then the athletes wanted to be like drug dealers. And so that, as you see all the drug dealers,
1,000%.
yeah, they get the big chains, the diamond earrings and stuff.
Yeah.
And so we created we evolved the diamond and gold industry back in those days. When you think about the pedicure, manicure shops, everybody's getting petty manis, right?
Yep.
There was in L.A. there was a nail salon called Man Trap,
Man
in Inglewood.
Trap. Okay.
So when you think about the name Man Trap, so women come there, get
This
their
is
nails
straight up
done,
trap.
they feed that's where they
Straight
so
trap.
they started, because before then it was press on nails.
Oh, okay.
You go to like
Yep.
Pick and Save
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever, and the girls press the nails on. So that's when that became very popularized, pedicure, manicures back then, right? And then you look at the fashion industry, Fila, Elise, starter jackets, Air Jordans. Like Jordan should have a nonprofit that just puts money back in prisons because of the guys who killed to get those shoes
Man,
back
we
in
couldn't
those
wear
days.
back in the day. We couldn't wear Jordans.
Yeah,
man.
they
You'd get robbed.
Oh yeah,
They'll shoot your
exactly,
head off.
exactly.
In the 80s,
Yes,
it was serious with
And
Jordans.
so we put Foot Locker on the map. So then we bought cars, Mercedes, Rolls Royces. They didn't really do Bentleys back then, but a lot of homeboys had like Rolls Royces and BMWs, candy paints, music, and then the cell phone industry.
Yeah.
Like I had the big NEC brick phone, and that industry was born out of there. We bought real estate, we traveled. So when you think about criminal money that's incorporated in the economy in this country, is why I always say crime will never go away. There has to be crime.
Yeah.
There has to be loopholes. I mean, drugs dealing created the DEA. It created Narcotics Task Force.
Yeah.
It created the ATF from the drive-bys and the AK-47s and all of that.
It's too many layers.
Yeah.
Too many
Makes
layers.
sense. You got to spend it, right? You can't invest it. It's
Yeah.
hard to invest
Exactly.
money that's coming
It's
in.
too
You have no
many layers.
background.
And then
for
how
it.
the feds work in those days too, like they'll let you build up. They'll watch you for a long period of time. Build up, get real estate, get assets, come indict you, then take
take all your
assets.
stuff. Yeah.
Take all
You
of
feel
it.
me?
Yeah.
So
And usually your paperwork ain't set up that way. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going back to the
exactly.
government
Because like
Straight
we
hustle,
all
yeah.
bought houses, but we used the same real estate man that was selling the houses, all the
Exactly.
drug dealers.
Exactly.
So we
That's
just
crazy.
wasn't thinking like that. And then you got to think about the music industry, gangster rap, another multi-billion-dollar industry. That's when R&B kind of went to the wayside
yep.
back then, because they wanted to promote the violence and the drug dealing in rap music, would begin to get the young kids thinking violently and valuing
This is what's
materialistic
cool. This is
things.
what's cool, yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of that, the $190 billion mass incarceration business. So,
You said
$90 billion
$190
industry in the United States prison system, from
I
juvenile
didn't even know it was
to
190.
state
That's
and
ridiculous.
federal. 190.
Hmm.
Because inside of these prisons, there's factories. All your airplane seats are made in prison. When you go to Costco and you go to Walgreens, you get 2 pair of prescription glasses for $99.
That's made
all
in
that
prison.
shit's made in prison.
Is it true? Like I was reading about that, right? Like they were saying that the prison system in the future knows how much to build and construct everything by single family homes
Yes.
and the whole nine.
So that's called correctional forecasting,
That's
right?
that's true.
Yes. So they also study the failure rate of kids in schools. Like here in Clark County School, it's the third largest school district in the country, 350.
48 or 49th every year.
Yes.
Yep.
And so they have what you call behavior schools here, alternative schools. And so we work in alternative school called Peterson. And so most of the young kids there, they got ankle bracelets. They have some type of criminal behavior activity in a regular school.
Yep.
And so
that's the Chef Jeff project.
Chef Jeff
Okay,
project.
I want to ask you about that too. Yep.
Yep. And then so when you look at the failure rate of kids not going to school, the addiction of vaping and drugs, there's a greater chance of them getting incarcerated one day. And so that's how they forecast the building of prisons based on that, and broken families where young boys are growing up in a house with just a mother, the father's either in prison or not in that child's life. So those kids kind of grow up uncivilized a little bit because, kids aren't disciplined and they lack structure that we had.
And
we
accountability.
Yeah, because there was a Mr. Johnson on the corner can thump you upside the head back in the days and bring you home to your mama and say, and we got paddled in school. Yeah. So I was getting paddled every week. My ass stayed red.
That's wild.
And the principal had to paddle with the hose in there, and you get lashes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But that structure, that's discipline, that's respecting authoritative figures. Yeah. And so now with that gone, and then home economics, wood shop, metal shop, all those basic programmings are gone because everybody's not college material. So you remove all of that. What are these young people going to do?
Yeah, we play video games. Play video games. Yeah, that's so what? So like, how you said prison saved your life?
Yes,
correct. How so?
So in 1988, I got indicted.
Okay.
By the feds.
Okay.
So in the mid 80s, up into the 90s, massive indictments all across this country. So they flood the community with the drugs and the weapons. So guys build massive fortunes, right? And all that gets confiscated. And then they start building up the prison system. Because in the prison system, every prison, there's factories. When I was in Terminal Island, we made metal furniture that went to U.S. government and foreign governments. Wow. You have prisons that rebuild alternators for military T-1 tanks and electrical harness for military jets. You have prisons that do printing. So I do a lot. I was just in North Carolina prison system in Ohio. They have printing factories. They make logos, patches, everything in these prisons that sell for cheap for the government. And
so these are the contracts that you get.
The contracts you get in the prison.
I follow you.
And so the more time you have, you're in these prison factories working for 12 cents, 20 cents an hour, and stuff in these prisons. So it becomes big business. And so I wound up serving almost 10 years in a federal system. Wow. And so I was 23 years old when I went in. And so I was in prison when it was called Club Feds. I don't know if you ever heard that term.
I think I did from a movie, but never
what does that mean? Yeah.
So Club Fed means, so the federal prison system is totally different from state correctional institutions. In state prisons, you have more hardcore. You got guys in there that
I follow you.
That shot four people to
it's
steal
like
$200.
Martha Stewart with the federal prison.
Federal prison.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I follow you.
So any crime that's federal, like bank robbery,
I get it. Yep.
Any crime that happens on a federal highway is or just like
money crimes, a lot of money crimes.
Anything cross state lines and stuff like that. So it's federal. And so when I went in the federal system, I was in there during the time that Ivan Boesky, Michael Milken. I was in there with the former president, CEO of Paramount Studios, bankers.
Oh, so you was picking these brothers.
These guys was like high level. Everyone in there was all the big cartel bosses. My cell was across from Rosario Gambino. I used to read a newspaper to him almost every day because his English wasn't that good. He was serving 45 years they were running heroin, the Gambino family through the pizza shops in New York City. And so even though he was an East Coast mafia dude, he was placed in Terminal Island. Really nice guy. He was the only prisoners that wore a Rolex watch and a gold chain with a rosary. And even the warden at that time was a retired full-board colonel named Fred C. Stock. And everyone called him Mr. Gambino. He was a short guy. And so I heard about the mafia as a kid on television. I said, I can slap this dude to the ground.
Yeah, right.
But you already know. You like calling home the moms and be like, "Hey,
your whole
mom's been
family's
missing
dead.
me home for like 10 days, right?"
The whole family dead for real.
But he was a super world. When I say world class gentleman, like those guys were criminals, but they had structure. Mm-hmm. They weren't dirty criminals like you get a lot in the States.
Extremely sophisticated.
Yeah, they
smart,
not like they were intelligent. You know, these mafia guys were like, you know, the kids, they grow up straight. Mm-hmm. You know, one kid goes to be an accountant. One kid goes and be a criminal defense attorney. One kid may be a real estate broker. Mm-hmm. So that's how they clean. They're not buying like, their whole setup. Yep. And so being in prison with these high level convicts, you know, the federal judge in there, what was his name? Alan Hastings. He was a black federal judge out of Miami for corruption. He was there. And so these guys were very elitist. They were like the 1%ers. And so they taught a lot of business classes, marketing, public
While you were in prison?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Because they didn't want to work in a factory. So they created educational courses for a lot of other inmates. And so this was the first time in American history that the federal system was flooded with black prisoners and Hispanic prisoners who came from poverty because of the level of drugs that was being moved and the assets that we had moved us up to that federal level.
I follow you. Yep.
And so when Nancy Reagan came out with Just Say No, the war on drugs, that's when they cleaned up. Was it part of a big conspiracy master plan to break up families of color? They say that's a conspiracy, right? They say it's a conspiracy that the federal government allowed the weapons and the cocaine to come into our communities because, again, drug treatment is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Everybody get paid. Yeah.
All the
Especially
way,
you said $190 billion.
It's $190 billion.
Unreal.
Google it.
That's unreal.
I might be off by $5 billion.
Yeah.
I was in it. I
Jeez.
read the paperwork. I see it. I'm at correctional conferences, the American Correctional Association, American Probation and Parole. So I teach at these associations around the country. So I get access to those numbers. And
That's
so
crazy.
in prison, bitter, blaming everyone, my father for not being in, my mother, my sister. I blamed everyone. And it didn't come to a time where I started to hold myself accountable. It didn't happen overnight. You know, so in prison, you have different cards, right? And so you got the Chicago card, you got the East Coast, you got the Mexican Mafia, you got the Aryan Nation, you got the Crip card, the Blood card, and you got all these different sets. And so when you go into the system, everybody is lobbying to recruit you to get in that card, right? And so me coming out of San Diego, I rolled with the 619, which was a San Diego card. We stuck together. In case something jumped off, we had each other's back. Even though I wasn't gang affiliated, but originally from L.A., I had a lot of Crip partners from L.A. that I went to school with in Long Beach and in L.A., so I was that guy caught in the middle.
That's tough.
So I had to really, it was stressful for me because I had to navigate the prison politics, trying not to take a side. But then again, you have to choose a side because if I had an issue with somebody on the yard,
protection.
I need that protection, right? And so then you have the Christians, you have the Muslims, you have the Nation of Islam, then you have Orthodox Muslims, and you had the Jewish card, then you had the Catholic, then you had atheism in prison, you had Native Americans, we had a TP on the yard. Because the one thing the federal government does, they respect everybody's religion. And so you had imams coming in, you had pastors coming in, you had gospel people. And so I was lost. So I knew nothing about history. I lacked self-love because my parents never, like one day I asked my dad, I said, Dad, was you ever in the Black Panther? Was you down with the movement in the 60s? He didn't know anything about that. No, my grandfather didn't either because as I became conscious in prison, so everybody was lobbying to get me, right? And so there was a guy named MZ. MZ had long locks like down to his butt, and they were matted. You could tell guys who got fresh locks, they get them put in there, but his was like matted. And so he was part of the BLA, the Black Liberation Army. If you're not familiar with them, look them up. And so it was a revolutionary group in the South that smuggled weapons from Mexico that didn't have serial numbers on there. And then they recruited prostitutes who gave birth to kids, and they had midwives. So they were birthing revolutionaries into the world that didn't have Social Security numbers or fingerprinting. So that way they can go on missions of killing.
Nobody have no
and there's nothing.
record.
So that's even like during, that's like the cartel, when they get robbed by black gang members here, they bring in guys across the border, their fingerprints ain't registered nowhere. They come over, do a hit, boom, they gone. You know, or guys go out of state and they do hits like that. And so MZ, he was an older guy. He gave me a book called Black Men, Obsolete, Single, Dangerous. And I'm like, man, I don't want to read this shit. I'm not into that, you know. And he would always pull me to the side. They was always huddling in their little corner in the yard talking about black history, the struggle. And then you have the Nation of Islam, who in their Bible back then was called Message to the Black Man. And then you have the Christians who had the Bible, the Muslims had the Quran, and then you had the Jewish people, so they were all pulling. And then the Nation guys, you know, they had their shirts buttoned up. You're out of Chicago, so you're very familiar with
Farrakhan lived
that.
across the street from my godmother in Hyde Park. So I know the Nation very well.
So, but one thing any warden to tell you, they respected the Nation in prison because they were highly disciplined and they never had problems.
They don't play either.
No, and they were gang member flippers. So I met a guy who used to be the person
to bring you in.
So they took the gang members and shifted their mentality. Instead of saying, why are you killing your brother? Love your brother. And so when I went to watch the video and listen to him, and then they started teaching history, like, you know, 400 years ago before we came here, kings and queens and all the things that we done in this country, from architects to things we invented. I'm like, damn, why didn't my school teacher ever tell me that? You know, why my dad, and then I was calling my dad, said, Dad, why you ever tell me this shit?
And you learning this in prison.
In prison.
Yep.
Right? And so I graduated from high school, but not with a GED. I graduated with a certificate of completion. The schools back in those days were funded. They passed kids through grades without even qualifying, because they keep you in the school and the schools are funded. So I should have never graduated.
Yeah, buddy.
And then I wound up going to school. So I got the books, I started reading, and I just started thinking different. I started analyzing things. Like, okay, now I see, now I know why we was always poor. Now I know how those people who lived in the burbs got those houses. And so I started valuing education, information, and being exposed. And so every race in prison had their own TV room. The white dudes had their TV room, the blacks had theirs, Hispanics, Asian, Island Pacificers have theirs, and the Wall Street boys had theirs. And so in their TV room, they always watched 60 Minutes, 2020 Primetime Live, financial news. They had Wall Street Journal, USA Today, National Geographics. And so I used to go by their TV room and just look through the window. And I could see the TV, but I really couldn't hear. And one day the Wall Street dude said, come on in. And so before I went in, I kind of looked to make sure none of the homeboys said, we doing going up in the white boys' TV room, right?
Yep.
And so I went in and took a seat in the back and started watching 60 Minutes. And what 60 Minutes was attractive to me was because Ed Bradley, Schaefer, you remember all those characters on, and they would always do reportings from around the world.
So you get a whole global.
And so Africa, China, and then they had National Geographics. And
Take
so
you there too.
I like that book because there was always pictures of, you know, the Amazon. I had never seen that shit before, and became very interesting to me. And then so having conversations with them, they had a Toastmasters in Terminal Island.
Yeah, that's the Toastmasters.
It's like public speaking.
Yeah, public speaking. Yep.
And so they're still sharpening steel while they doing time, and they watching their financials from prison. So their accountants is coming in the visiting room.
Wow.
They making, so that's residual money. They're making money while they doing time. We didn't set our money up like that. We had the cars, the jewelry, and all that. And then went to Toastmasters. And
Is that how you learn to speak?
I always knew how to speak.
Okay, as far as like public speaking.
Yes, public speaking was my first, and I'm going to show you before I got a picture of me. It's weird, man. Like, I don't know why I took certain pictures, even in public speaking in prison, and I got pictures of me in my prison chef uniform without even dreaming of it was a hustle or speaking. And I got all these things, and that's how I wound up getting on Oprah. Because she didn't believe a lot of it. And then I came with receipts. And she was like, oh, okay. So every part of my story, I got the pictures, right? And so the guy said, listen, I want you to talk about how you became a millionaire at 19 and 20 years old. And so I talked about all my marketing strategies. I was a chameleon, how I dressed different to go in different hoods. Yeah. And then when I went to LA, I bought like 3 Nissan Sentras, brand new, 1985 Nissan Sentras in Mission Bay. And then I always had I had a female would drive the car, kids in the car. I had packages from shopping that would go in the car.
It's a whole hustle.
Yeah, and then before they had the golf shirts, we had La Tigre. I don't know if you guys remember La Tigre. You remember La Tigre? The little remember Britican, British little flag. So it was shirt just like this.
Okay.
With a
stripes,
alligator.
Has the stripes on it.
Yeah, alligator,
that was back in the day. Yeah, that was back in the day. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Okay.
And I would have that on.
Okay.
And I didn't look gangster or street because I had
but
no
that was
tattoos.
the whole purpose.
Yeah, and I never got tattoos because I always had homeboys that got busted based on their tattoos.
They know.
So I never got tattoos. And so I went up there, gave my spiel. I think I had 12 minutes, 15 minutes, and came off. And then the dude came up to me and said, Jeff, he said, you smart. I said, what do you mean? He said, when you was on the street, you understood marketing, branding, public relations, distribution. You understood profit and loss. You know how to manage a diverse workforce. I never heard those words before. I didn't know what marketing and any of that shit was, right? So there's a very thin line between entrepreneurship and hustlepreneurship. Yeah. Very thin line, right?
Yeah.
So he said to me, he said, Jeff, he said, man, he says, all you got to do is change the product. He said, man, you could be successful in anything. And so through reading Black history, I started to love myself and love my people and community. Yeah. And so in 1990, vividly, I remember, and I still have the Ebony magazine, came out because it took 10 years for the medical research folks and the government to study the impact of crack on the human body. It's just like when the pandemic, no one knew how to address that. They needed time. Same with HIV. Back in the days, guys was dying like this with AIDS. Now you live a whole life. You needed time to study that. Magic Johnson is still rolling, right? And so it came out, the magazine, and on the front it had 2 little black babies with a bunch of vials of crack in it. And that's where the term crack babies came from. And so back in that era, when people were getting hooked on crack, they started with Primos. So after, they smoked the weed got weaker. The Mexican cess got weaker, and then they started sprinkling a little bit of rock in there. So it's called Primo. So you get a little bit of weed and a little bit of that crack in there too. It's highly addictive. And so you had suburban, you had wives, professional, lawyers, doctors, wealthy white kids from the burbs coming in the hood getting crack. And so when they ran out of money and got broke, then they prostitute themselves to get high, whether it was, kind of graphic, but they traded that to get high. And through that process, you had a generation of children who were born addicted to crack, but also not knowing who their father was.
That's wild.
So now you have the drug dealer baby, you have the crack baby, you have the sugar daddy's baby. Then you have the military, because San Diego was a military town. So every time the ships came in, all the girls would rush to the Navy clubs and then they get knocked up. And then these young guys are going back home. So you had a generation of young people. So now when you think about the anger, the violence, you think about these mothers bringing children in the world. Like, damn, who's the father? I just had a train run on me last night, 15 guys. That's how I got high for a whole week. Who's the daddy? And so that's the generation of the 80s, where there was no family structure, there was no middle class values, and the mothers didn't really want the kids, but that became a welfare hustle. More kids you got, the more welfare money you got. And so that addiction has went on and on and on, and it's just destroyed a generation of black people and brown families, right? And so when I saw that magazine, tears just whoop. Because I was a part of that.
I was just about to say that because you did that.
I did that. I was there. I was in the rock houses. I cooked cocaine. I packaged it. I sold it. I coached. I had a sales team. I motivated. I taught guys. I said, man, leave the colors alone. Stop banging. Let's get this paper, right? Because money is money. Don't matter who's buying your product. You know, I don't care if who you selling it to, because that's like anything. Like, you can't be a racist car salesman.
Not at all. The color's green.
Hey, it's green. It's gonna impact your bottom line,
green.
right?
Yeah.
And so I always understood that, but didn't know the terminology of that. And so on and on. Anyway, became very close with the Wall Street guys, and you know, they was putting me up on game. And I lost my job once. I got fired. They put me in the kitchen on pot and pan detail after I got out of solitary confinement and got in the kitchen, and I started washing dishes and stuff, and then helping the cooks out. Got really good. There was a guy by the name of Mr. Womack, and he was a head inmate cook, and he took me under his wing. He taught me how to cook. And so while I was working in the kitchen with him, I started an underground catering business because I wanted favor from the Wall Street dudes. So I said, how do I get closer to them? So what is the number one commodity in prison? Food. So I started stealing all the red onions, hard-boiled eggs, extra chicken out of the kitchen when I became the head inmate cook. Cookies, baked goods, then I traded them. So the Wall Street guys were very elitist. They didn't want to wait in line like all the rest of the convict. So I cooked for them. We had microwaves. I made cheesecakes. I made top ramen noodle dishes, all kind of shit. And so the Wall Street guys, they want their top ramen noodles, so they wanted, you know, chicken to go in there, and I had onions, and you know, I was still seasoning. My socks low. I used to stuff my underwear. I walked out the kitchen. I looked like I was pregnant. I stole everything that wasn't locked up in the refrigerator. And then, you know, so we ate good. The Fed system, we ate good. When I first got indicted, we had T-bone steaks every week.
In the Fed system?
Yeah, with the bone. No, not now. That's all changed. After 60-minute story broke in 1991.
Okay. Showing what's really happening with tax dollars. Yep.
So federal system was built for wealthy white men who got their hand caught in the cookie jar.
Got it.
And government officials, judges, Congress people, because they passed the budgets.
Got it.
So they made sure the federal prison system had a huge budget. Swimming pools, bocce ball courts, law library that would mirror USC Law School. Like we had a wood shop, leather shop, metal shop, tennis courts, handball courts.
That's wild.
We had a gym that would make 24-hour fitness look like it's nothing. Baseball diamonds. We had basketball.
That ain't even right. It makes you want to go to prison. That's crazy. That's crazy as hell. Yeah.
But that's how it was designed then. And then so when 60 Minutes did a special on Club Fed, they exposed it. And so they filled the swimming pools. They took away a lot of those. We had a movie theater. We saw movies like 3 to 6 months after they showed at AMC Theater. We had a real
before you even got it on tapes and stuff. Yeah, that's wild.
we had that in there. You know what I'm saying? So for me, prison refined me. I went in prison with a high level of how the world works. I understood business from a street level.
How it really works.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in prison, the Wall Street guys became so fast. I became so fascinated with them of how they built wealth, how they stuck together, how they didn't waste time. They didn't play sports. You know, all the homeboys playing basketball, lifting weights, getting all buff. They was on this. Yeah. I got a little yoked up when I was in there, but once I started getting that knowledge, for what? I want this. Yeah. I quit lifting weights. That's why you don't see me all swole up, tatted up. So I understood, you know, how to get access, how to build those relationships and stuff.
And how did that like translate into like the Chef Jeff project, right? I think obviously that's the the important thing. I want to make sure before we run out of time, we get a chance to really focus on that.
I got a lot of editing to do.
No, I like to listen all day.
I like listening to it for sure.
I think for sure, but I think really we want to leave out on really the positivity, right? The Chef Jeff project and what you're bringing to the table, what that mission's about, and like what you're looking to accomplish from that.
Got you. Yep. And it was all born out of success. There's a process that everyone has to go through to get here, right? My process was a process with Vegas Circle. One day y'all gonna have this arena.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
You're speaking straight up. Yeah, you're speaking
You're going
through
that process right now,
100%.
right? And so I came out in 1996, and a famous chef in Beverly Hills named Robert Gatsby, who worked for Thomas Keller, Joe Robichon, Alan DeCoste. Thomas Keller is the number one chef in the world.
Yep.
And so he was opening up a place. I read about him in the USA Today in prison. And he was opening up at 672 Wilshire LeBray in Beverly Hills. And I started writing him letters from prison. Hey, I'm getting out October the 2nd. I love opportunity. I'm a great dishwasher. I know how to cook the mostly institutional cuisine. and I made my way to Beverly Hills, and he didn't hire me right away. He was a British guy, super polished, clean shaven, had the wireframe glasses, starch white coat, smoked cigars. He had mostly this high-end folks coming there, and he eventually hired me, taught me classical French cooking, took me under his wing. I went on to work at Gatsby's, to the Ritz-Carlton, the Marriott, Hotel Bel Air, L'Ermitage.
Those are all high-end
all
spots.
5-star, 5-diamond. Like, so I strategically selected the places that I worked, is because I'm this type of guy. When I was on the street, I studied the most successful drug dealers. And so whoever was the wealthiest drug dealers, I watched them. I studied the cars they drove, the clothes they wore, how they communicated, how they built relationships, how they went in different communities in different states and set up business. So coming out of prison, I want to know who the top chef was. What do they know I don't know? So I went and got jobs strategically at restaurants and hotels where the top chefs were at.
Yep.
And so I didn't have the culinary pedigree, the background, so I always went in as a dishwasher. And then I never took a break. I never took vacation. I never called in sick.
And you had a gift of gab, so you know how to work your way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I did, so on my lunch break, I went over to the fine dining restaurants and I posted up and I just studied the guys, watched them, I asked questions. They threw menus and recipes in the trash. I would take them out. I had a dictaphone because I didn't understand French terminology like lexan, mise en place. And so I would record them. And then I had what you call a food lover's guide, food companion, that has a dictionary with all French culinary terminology. And that's how I taught myself, and I bought cookbooks. And so I had clean shaved my face, took makeup, covered my earring hole, started getting my hands manicured and polished, get invested in getting my grill tight. So nothing about me was threatening. Nothing about me said prison. And so I worked my way all through L.A., went to San Diego. I ran a restaurant called La Scale, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It used to be the La Meridian, a French 4-star hotel. The Marriott took it over. I chefed that for a year, came back to L.A., worked at Ritz-Carlton in a fine dining room with a 3 Michelin star chef, Gerard Ferry. It was interesting because I never ate escargot, caviar, so I learned about 000 beluga caviar, Saruga caviar. So I had to taste all these different foods. I was like, damn, it just, I had no palate for that shit, but I had in order to become it, I had to cook it and taste it, right?
Yeah.
And then so I set my sights on Vegas in 2001. I came here, stayed at the Jockey Club. You guys know the Jockey Club?
Yeah, right next to Bellagio.
Before it was surrounded. It was the cheapest place to stay on the strip because it was owned by private owners. And so I started at the Mandalay Bay. I worked my way all the way down Paris. Paris hotels pretty much hired me, introduced me to the kitchen I was going to be working in, the staff. And then when the record came up, they said, we're going to call and get back what you never did. Yep. So Caesars was the only place I didn't want to apply because I didn't tell you about that before, but I used to be a high roller at Caesars. Caesars used to cater to all the black drug dealers, mafia, Arabs from all across the world. Used to
so they already knew who you were.
They was the only game in town. So we used to come in there with Louis Vuitton duffel bags, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 cash, all the Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvis Hagler, Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes fights. He had Caesars. Back in the days, the fights were outside before they had big showrooms like that. So the fights were always outside under a big tent. And so I saw Marvis Hagler's last fight when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard. If you watch the HBO film, you'll see me and my boys coming down. We're like maybe 5 seats from the ring.
Damn.
I had a big old Mercedes medallion. We had all the jewels on. Couldn't tell us nothing, right? Yeah. And so I had an eerie feeling. And so I had a gambling addiction back in the day. So I probably lost 300,000 here in Vegas at Caesars back in the days. Even today, I don't go in casinos unless I'm speaking, I have business, because when I see the tables, I've never touched anything since almost 40 years ago. When I see the tables, my stomach knots up. When I see dice, they knot up. So I don't have a good feeling in casinos. So I'm glad when I was working there in the kitchen, I was in the back of the house, so I never saw that. And so I put my resume in, and Jim Perello, he was an Italian chef from New York, called me into office and interviewed me. Not my first, but I got multiple interviews, but he didn't care about the record. He said, Jeff, you ever killed anybody? I said, no, sir. He said, can you cook? I said, yes, sir. He said,
that's all he wanted to know.
That's all he wanted to know.
Damn.
So he used to be the executive chef of the Beverly Hills Hotel, the big pink one.
Oh, so
yes.
Okay.
I was at the Bel Air on Stone Canyon.
Got it.
Both were 5-star. I mean, Michael Jackson, Oprah. We owned a 99-room boutique hotel. And then he said, come in and cook. And so he wanted 6 courses. So there were other chefs competing for the job. Chef Tornat in Lascaux, the Italian restaurant, not Lascaux, Terrazza. And so he said, okay, 6 courses I want. And they had a round banquet table, and the vice president, everybody was there. So I did 7 courses instead of 6. So I up one on other chefs. Because everything I had to do always had to be better, had to be extraordinary. It couldn't be ordinary, never ordinary for me. Everything above average for me. And so, banquet china, you go to banquets. Events, you got that old ugly bone white china with the salmon bit in the warmer box. So I came in the night before the prep, and I went to every restaurant in Caesars, and I took china from every restaurant. I was the only chef who had different china for each one of my courses. So you
stood out.
Stood out. Remember, stand out. So this guy named Marcus Buckingham, you got to get his book called Stand Out. And so again, that's part of the whole process. Your podcast, how do you stand out above all the other, it's being innovative and creative. And I was the same way even as a drug dealer. Like, how do I didn't gang bang, so I didn't have the violence around me because I know violence brings police. So I stayed low key. I never went to parties, hardly ever went to a concert. Why? Because that's where all the fights and the neighborhoods jump off. So I was never there. So I moved very strategically. And so when I came here and so he hired me at Caesars. I was a chef tournant at Terrazza. Within 3 months, he promoted me to the first black exec chef, and he put me in the Palatial buffet. Even though I came from a fine dining background, traditionally black chefs in Vegas don't get further than the coffee shop or buffet or catering. Like, we rarely got steakhouses or fine dining rooms. It's just the culture here back then, right? And so I got promoted to the Palatial buffet, turned that place around, and I finally got an interview at Bellagio, because I came here to go to Bellagio, the big B, the Bentley of them all back then.
That's the best,
And I came into Bellagio. I had to wait 3 chefs get fired to finally get a guy by the name of Wolfgang von Wieser hired me as an assistant chef of Cafe Lago, and then got a Cafe Lago as assistant chef. The other chef went out on stress. They promoted me to exec chef, and then that's how. And then I was running that restaurant, and it was their premier, highest grossing restaurant on the Las Vegas Strip at the time. I ran it for about 18 months. And one day the phone rang, hello, Chef Jeff, may I help you? He said, hey, this is Mike Salters from New York. I'm a literary agent. I love your story. Would you be interested in writing a book? And I said, well, I never thought about writing a book. I said, how do you know about my story? He says, Karen Page, Andrew Dunningberg, they wrote a book called Becoming a Chef, heard me speak in New Orleans about my story, how I used to cook cocaine and was a cocaine chef, prison chef turned gourmet chef. And then he says, I love your story. I think I can get you a book deal. He said, if I come out and we write a proposal, I get you a book deal. Are we in business? I said, yeah. So we came out. I wrote a proposal called Cook, from the street to the stove, from cocaine to foie gras. He went back to New York. Every major publishing house went into a bidding war to publish my memoir. And we went with William Morrow, because they had cookbook background. So wrote the book at the Budget Suites on the Las Vegas Strip on the South End. I had a Jewish ex-drug addict who was a ghostwriter with me. And he did like 9 months in jail. So he understood lockup. He understood prison culture, the politics, which really helped me shape that book. Then Mike called back once we turned in the manuscript. He said, Jeff, I said, yeah, what's up, Mike? He says, you going on Oprah? I'm like, Oprah?
That's huge.
I'm like, damn, this overnight, right? Then Oprah, right? So then book came out, went on Oprah, told my story to the world. And then 2 hours after Oprah was over, I was in New York. The phone rang again. Hello, Chef Jeff, may I help you? I said, hey, man, what's up, Jeff? I said, hey, who's this? He said, man, this is Will Smith. I said, come on, who's playing on my phone? So my agent was on a 3-way call with Will. He was filming I Am Legend in Brooklyn. Damn. And he sent his homeboy to pick me up, and his homeboy was Heavy D. He was in a white Lincoln Navigator.
Oh, wow.
He was small.
I was a big fan of Heavy D.
Yeah, because he had a heart situation.
Yep.
So Heavy D picks me up. We head up to Brooklyn. I spend 2 days on the set of I Am Legend with Steve Tisch, Jason Blumenthal, Todd Black. They do all of Denzel's Will Smith movies. So all the big boys. His mother was there. He had a pimped out trailer like city block long. This was just crazy. I just couldn't fathom this shit.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Story.
I never chased.
When is your movie coming out?
Yeah,
Man, you gonna have a Netflix
and then by
movie out.
5 o'clock the next day, I had a multi-million-dollar movie deal. They wrote me a check for $750,000. That's how I bought the house for my family that I live in.
Oh, so
now.
you did come up with a movie deal?
Yeah, I got the movie deal.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then so it's a lot more money on the back end. So he bought the rights. So I spent some time with him, and then they bought the rights. And then a week later, phone rang again. Hello, Chef Jeff, may I help you? He said, it's Bob Tushman, Senior VP of Food Network. Said, we love your story. We saw you in Oprah. We want to do a TV show with you. I'm like, this dude, I'm telling you, it was scary. It's like I was worried someone was going to, just like, why me?
Too positive.
Yeah, so this is how we're leading up to the Chef Jeff Project. Why me? Drug dealer, prison, stole. I was a car thief, broken houses as a kid. I did all kind of things. Why me, right? And so when we talk about the journey, the process, and being highly favored, that's a Christian term. You know, highly, like, how does Jay-Z become a multi-billionaire rapper? Why didn't other ones come? He was highly favored. Right place, anointed, yep. Right place, right time, right relationships in the process. So got the Food Network show. So they said Bobby Flay was big. He was a big dog. Rachel Ray and them back then. So me and Guy Fieri started at the same time. And so I said, you know, here's an opportunity for me to do some good with this TV show. And I said, let's do the Chef Jeff Project. And let me take at-risk kids into a kitchen and use the power of food to impact these kids. Because in cooking, in the process of cooking, the formula, there's leadership, there's delegation, there's execution, there's attention to detail, there's leadership, all these different principles that are tied into running a brigade in a kitchen. And so we did one, it was a prime time docu-follow series. And we got one season of it. And then after that, I got the cookbook deal, and then I was on the road, and my wife called me. She says, honey, U.S. Airlines wants you to speak at their leadership conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I said, okay. I said, well, they're probably going to pay me $1,000, $1,500. We were living on South Las Vegas Boulevard in a 2-bedroom apartment with our kids. And then, and then she called back a few hours later, screaming in the phone, said, you're not going to believe this. I said, what happened to the kids? No, how much they going to pay you? I said, how much? She said, $30,000.
Dang.
Now, $30,000.
Yeah, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Seattle. I got my Gateway computer. I mean, Gateway's big old thick one with the mouse in the middle. I'm online, and then I said, I Googled up public speaking. I said, shit, I'm in the wrong damn business. I wrote my resume and resigned from the Bellagio at that moment.
From that first gig?
Yes.
30 grand.
30 grand. My first professional speaking engagement was 30,000. And then agents started calling me. I was with CAA. I was with UTA. I was with William Morrison Endeavor. And I wound up having 4 TV shows. Flip My Food, Family Style with Chef Jeff. And I was on the Game Show Network with a show called Beat the Chefs. And then, so that went on and on. So I wound up quitting. And then I was still speaking in prison and stuff. Pandemic hits 2020. Nobody's traveling. Everything's shut down. So I had some change put away. And I was at North Las Vegas, never go over there. So I'm a creature of habit. Every time I go to the airport, every time I go to a store, I take the same road, the same left turn. I don't never spread
routine,
out.
yep.
So I got lost out there, and I was coming down Las Vegas Boulevard, and I saw these little kitchens, ghost kitchens. And I pulled up in there, 4D commissary, and I saw these little kitchens. I saw the owner, and I said, what's happening with these? Educate me. He said, we charge $3,000 a month, has 1 stove, 2 tables, refrigerator, and a freezer. I said, I want this. So I wired him the money, got the place, and I launched the Chef Jeff Project relaunch. And I went on Facebook, and I started saying, if you're a single mother and have a son who's having challenges in school or at home, bring him to the Chef Jeff Project. And so I started bringing him in. I taught him we was making beignets, we're cooking food and mentoring him. So I was bringing other former lifers and former drug dealers who turned their life around. And so that gave birth to the Chef Jeff Project relaunch as it is today. And so we've been around for 5 years now.
That's awesome.
And so my family and I have invested close to $400,000 of our own money.
Congratulations.
And so we're now in partnership with the city of Las Vegas, Clark County, and the EDA. We won a $2 million grant a few years ago. So now we have a mobile culinary school.
Oh,
so we go into Summit View Detention Center. We go into behavior schools and also Spring Mountain Youth Camp. So we're very active in the prevention, intervention space in Clark County School District, working with disconnected kids in workforce development.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Yeah. That's
a
powerful,
great,
man.
yeah, very.
I can
impactful.
listen to you talk
wrap
for a
this
minute.
up.
This dude straight motivational
I know.
speaking, man. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up, man. But I
So
do
I'm
gotta
gonna tell you
ask
one
you.
thing. I gotta go one thing
go
real
ahead.
quick.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
so this is a trip, and I just thought about this. Like everything that I've done, the seed was already planted, because I used to talk a lot as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I was always told to shut up.
Sound like
And
me.
I had
Yeah, so it's like all
Sound
three of us probably.
Yeah.
And I had
that's
aunts,
me all
and my
day, yeah.
mother used to slap me in the mouth for talking too much.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, the boy don't never stop
That's
talking.
my youngest son's like that too.
And now
Yeah.
I make a living
Make
traveling
money.
the world talking. So it goes to tell you, when a parent is unconscious and lacks certain values, they can do harm to a child and crush their potential
That's
and
real.
their dream.
That's
I got two kids that talk. I just let them talk. I may plug my ears or something, but I just let them talk.
Yeah, let
know
her
what
hear
I'm
that. My wife, I'm just messing with my wife. Yeah. So I got to ask you, being a chef, I
Yes.
can't leave out on this because I'm a big foodie. What's your favorite restaurant?
I
in
knew you
Vegas?
was gonna go there.
Yeah,
I heard
got
you
to.
ask somebody else.
That's why I asked everybody that.
Yes.
So what's your favorite restaurant in
So
Vegas?
most of the my eating out
Okay.
is not here, because I'm wheels
Not here
up,
anymore?
Not here in Vegas, because
Okay.
I travel so much.
Okay. So
Like,
when
I
you
just got-
here, where
when
do you
I'm
eat
here,
at? Okay.
so when the steakhouse,
Okay.
it's Prime Steakhouse at Bellagio, Kraft, Tom Colicchio's place
Tom's
at
good. Yeah.
MGM. Also, the new it used to be Nero Steakhouse at Caesars. I'll go there
Okay.
from time to time, right?
Crab steak, what we got? Oh, that's why I get engaged
Luger's.
at.
Was it-
Luger's is good.
is
So
that
I got
called
engaged at crab steak.
Okay, Kraft,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I love
yeah,
Kraft
yeah.
because it's my
good food.
style.
It's good.
It's
great
good food.
Yeah, it's great food.
And it's
Yeah.
casual.
Yeah, it's great.
I don't like to have to put a suit
Yeah.
on. And so
Okay.
those are my favorite
Steak,
places.
okay.
But I'm really
Awesome.
into street food, comfort food.
Yeah.
I'm a food truck guy, hit food trucks up. I
Okay.
like holes in the walls.
That's
Every
awesome.
city I go to, if you look at, I'm a coffee aficionado. So I hunt down
okay.
like coffee shops, pastry shops, no
Okay.
matter where I go, in the country, outside the country.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah.
So steaks your
Yeah.
thing is what I got out of it. And also, you a hard ass worker, man.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I'm a grinder.
So
yeah.
that's what's up. What else is next for you, man? What's next on the plan for 2026 coming up?
We'll continue to build the Chef Jet Project. We just
Okay.
partnered with a couple national organizations. I'm going to Texas, Houston this weekend with the
Okay.
Blacks in Criminal Justice.
Okay.
And so there's a renowned research professor, Dr. Yusuf, from Bethune-Cookman Historical
Yusuf,
Black
I know
College.
that name. Yeah.
Dr. Yusuf's
Yeah.
sister.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No,
Yeah.
Okay, I think I saw the
Yeah.
flyer for
Kadeem.
it. Yeah.
Yes. You
Oh,
saw
so you sent me the flyer on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Yep.
And so they're going to study the Chef Jet Project and create a curriculum over 6 months. That will be, I'll be able to use to create pilot programs all across the country. So other people, train the trainer. So other folks will be able to take my curriculum training model, the Chef Jet Project, and work with system impacted and disconnected youth across the country. So that's one thing. I'm working on a new book called Perception, because one of the perception, how people perceive you and how you perceive other people, which is a big issue in disconnected youth, underserved youth, inner city youth, because of how they carry themselves and conduct themselves and why they have challenges landing employment
I
opportunities.
already know where you're going.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you look? How do you walk? How do
How
you
you
sit in a
present yourself,
chair?
yep.
How do you eat? How do you hold a fork? How do you build relationships? How do you socialize?
Yep.
And so that's going to be my next piece. And hopefully, you know,
And
someday.
hustle entrepreneur, right? We're gonna do together. Is what you were saying?
Yeah.
We'll
And so-
put that book together.
Yeah.
That's
And
another
so,
one for
so
you.
also, so
Yep.
the project I'm doing with the study is called the Hustlepreneur Project.
Okay. Mhm.
And so I like Hustlepreneur because it's not your traditional entrepreneur.
Yep.
And so these are unique skill sets that you only can learn through lived
Not doing
experience.
it.
You
Not
can't
doing it.
teach hustle.
Yeah.
You can't teach
in you.
grit. You know, like so it's developed and built on based on those experiences. And so people always ask me, say, when I came to Vegas, man, it's gonna be a tough kitchen, chef. I said, man, I manage lifers and killers in a penitentiary, right? And so prison, you develop grit, mental toughness, adaptability, because one day you could be in one cell, another, one prison next. So all these traits you hear everybody talking about, grit and adaptability, mental toughness, prison prepares you for this on the outside if you have a shift in the way that you think. And so that's my focus
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Chef Jeff Henderson, man, you a beast, man.
Yeah,
You
we're
a
gonna keep
beast,
monitoring
man.
you
I
for
appreciate
sure.
you sitting down with us, man. And
Appreciate it.
what's the social handles people can reach out to you?
On Instagram, all social handles are at Chef Jeff Live.
Okay,
And
perfect.
then at the Chef Jeff Project, and then of course you just Google me, everything comes up right there as well too. So
I'm gonna have to listen to
appreciate
more of
that.
your speeches, man. So I appreciate you sitting down with us, man, and check us out at thebakercircle.com, man. Thank you for your time, man.
Anytime you guys want to have me
Thank
back.
you so
on.
much.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
powerful.
Appreciate you, man.